Customer service, done right, can be your company's single biggest competitive advantage. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution. Join customer service authority and best-selling author John DiJulius as he interviews leaders who are revolutionizing their industries. This is more than a podcast, though. It's a movement. The Customer Service Revolution is a radical overthrow of conventional business mentality designed to transform what customers and employees experience. If you're a revolutionary customer service leader who's ready to stop competing on price and obsessed with building a brand that people cannot live without, this podcast is for you.
Welcome back, revolutionaries, to another episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast with John DiJulius. I'm Denise Thompson, managing partner for the DiJulius Group, and I am here with the Chief Revolutionary Officer of the DiJulius Group, Mr. John DiJulius.
Hello. Hi, Denise.
Welcome back, John. Good to see you.
Great to be seen.
Where have you been?
I was in, where was I last? DC. It was really good. It was a great group of ophthalmologists and their staffs. And LASIK, throw them out there, vision ophthalmology partners. But I love dealing with companies like that because they do LASIK. So anything elective, I think in medical, they work harder at the patient experience because elective is optional. And there's so many different price points, versus if it's a dentist that, not doing cosmetic, or any type of doctor that takes insurance, they don't, it's not a, they don't have, I guess there's no competing on price in that regard, and everyone needs it and has to have it. But so I've always liked elective, working with elective in medicine, because they work a lot harder. But it's funny, obviously one of the challenges is it comes up that we worked on is, how do you answer the question, I can get it cheaper somewhere else? And that, and everyone has that. But that freaks me out that people want to go to the lowest bidder for their eyes. Right? How was your eye surgery? Well, not so good. Don't see as well as I could, but I only spent $450 per eye. Right? If it's a lamp and it's the same lamp and I can get it for, 20-30% less, I'm all for that. But it's like
you do see specials though. Buy one eye, get one.
Yeah, that's all you see. There's a ton. How do
you, and I don't even know what it costs for that surgery, but if it's $5,000 an eye,
yeah,
how do you justify $10,000 versus $5,000?
Well, so it's changing the narrative, right? It's, so when we were working with this, it's like anything else. What's the, so apples to apples. So they were coming up with some examples of, that their competitors say that you have lifetime, guarantee. But they said that's not really true because the lifetime guarantees only goes with that doctor. And if the doctor quits, retires, dies, the lifetime guarantee goes away. And so, so making sure it's apples to apples, making sure that, and how many procedures, has that doctor done or that practice done? It's kind of like Botox.
Like a Groupon to...
Yeah, well, but even Botox, it used to be done just by, I don't know what the doctor was called, but now there's people that go to school for that procedure, but they aren't doctors. And I'm not discrediting it, but who do you want it done by? Someone that just got out of a certification class? Or, I don't know. So it's changing the narrative. It's like anything, making sure that people realize, that the cheaper you go, the more it's going to cost them. And with eyesight, right, with a heart surgery, you're talking about some serious stuff. Versus I chose a cheaper cable company or internet company. That sucks, and I'm gonna, have outages or can't get a hold of a human being for tech support or all those things, which does cost you more, and you just wish you would have paid, the better price. but when you're dealing with, even like when we worked with companies like Goodyear, and they were talking about competing on price. I don't know, I don't know if I'd be a good or poor salesperson, but if a guy came in and said, I want the cheaper tires, I'd be like, well, let me ask you, how much do you love your wife and kids? Right? Because, for $75 more a tire, when they're living in the Midwest in January, don't you want that peace of mind? So I think changing the narrative and making sure it's apples to apples, and making sure that you're exploring what the true cost of going cheaper could be.
So there are a lot of companies too, and I think of this with whether it's retail or whether it's the eye surgeon, that will, let's say, nickel and dime you. So I have a lower price, but I'm maybe not
Right.
tell you about
Spirit
that.
Airlines.
You get perfect example.
Right. In Frontier, it's, oh my God, it's $79 to Cleveland to Miami, direct flight. But
you have to stand, and you
yeah, you have to pick a seat, or you have to pay for a seat. You have to pay for your carry-on. You have to pay for your luggage. You have to pay for a pilot, right? And anything else you want. And, now it gets a little up there. Besides, you have to incur horrible customer experience. I mean, it sounds bad, but I probably was never so happy to see a brand file bankruptcy this past year with Spirit Airlines, just because they represent everything wrong or against what we preach. They're the antithesis of good customer service.
So Southwest was known for a long time, I think, as being a lower cost. I don't know how low cost they are compared to some of the other ones now. However, they've always managed to provide great service. What makes them different?
Well, I think they've taken a hit, like Starbucks, the past, and maybe it's since the pandemic, but I feel like they aren't the darling of U.S. I feel like Delta has passed them, and I think this customer satisfaction has shown that. But yeah, they've always had a culture. Like I flew on them last week to BWI, and I chose the front seat because I didn't need my luggage, because it's still, as of today, choose your own seating. Right? I know they're changing. But at the front, first row, they have the Southwest heart. Right? It's kind of like their logo, if you will. And I've always liked that. And I just think they've done a great job. I mean, operationally, they're great. I've always just marveled that when you land and pull up to the gate, man, that door is open and they're unloading. It seems to be less than a minute versus everyone. Why can they do that? And it seems like it's several minutes, if not 10 minutes, before any other airlines gets it open. But their staff has always been more friendlier. I think they've always really obsessed over the culture. It may have been declined. And again, the pandemic is really, some haven't come back fully. A lot haven't come back fully. So you go to the Starbucks, which is in the news, and an article that it will have come out, I think, by the time this thing come out. But I talk about the Starbucks, the commoditization of the Starbucks experience 2.0, and the 1.0 was in 2007. Then CEO Howard Schultz sent an internal memo that the watering down of the Starbucks experience. We just became obsessed with comp sales, same store sales, and all these things, and we no longer are the third party place. And that memo got leaked, and it was a great scolding of looking in the mirror that Howard Schultz did. And around that time, that's when they hired us, and he came back to Starbucks. He had left, retired, if you will. And he came back and he resurrected it, and like to think we had some part of that. But then from probably 2009 to, maybe close to a decade, they were the darlings again. But now it's happened again, where they've had, I think, at least 4 quarters or 4 periods of decline in sales consecutive, and they're not the darlings anymore, and they got obsessed with efficiency and online ordering, to go digital. They've reduced the size of their in-store. They just got away from the third-party place. A lot of other things. So I think it's Brian Nickel, the former Chipotle CEO, is now the new CEO, and I just wrote about all the things he's doing. But he's even going back to writing names and messages on cups, which some people don't like. I've always loved that. But getting back to the in-store experience, and the thing that made Starbucks a third-party place.
So it sounds like you're saying they might need to bring you back, though.
Us back, yeah. No, it's just it's all of these things of we get too caught up in profitability, efficiency, and we forget what made our brands so unique.
Speed of service makes me think of Domino's. When Domino's hired the DiJulius group.
Yeah.
Specifically.
So the example there was when they hired us, they said, what was it? They said before they hired us, their commitment and all their advertisements, 15 years ago was all about speed of service. And back then their mantra is or guarantee was if you didn't get it within 30 minutes, it was on us. I think that was it. And so they said they committed to speed of service, and over the course of time, they were so proud that they accomplished that, only to realize their friendly was last. So they became number one in speed of service and last in the industry at friendly, their KPI. So that's when they hired us to help bring back that friendly hospitality without compromising speed of service, which we did.
And talk about a top. It really came from the top with them. So Glenn.
So you're talking about their biggest U.S. franchisor.
Correct, Glenn Mueller.
From RPM.
Lived and breathed service. I remember seeing him actually physically run into stores and greet people. And Alan Lovelace, who is now, I see him opening locations, another one, a big cheerleader for the people all the time. So they have an interesting model, and they encourage people within the business to get to a point where they can open their own locations. And they're always working to grow their people, which I think is fantastic. They changed from speed of service to becoming more service-oriented, but they didn't change the people.
But again, they wanted to balance, operational excellence with friendly hospitality. It can't be one or the other if you don't want to be the Spirit Airlines of your industry.
But they did it without having to change people, which I know is a concern for some people. How do I get the people that have worked with me for so long to become more service-oriented? And we talk.
Yeah, I have a quote that says you can dramatically improve the level of customer experience you're delivering with the exact same employees you have. Doesn't mean you have to go and clean house. Doesn't mean everyone, but I would be more worried about a leader that maybe has to go if they don't believe in it, they don't walk the talk. But I believe employees are more product of the training and culture they're put in. We talk about this all the time. Our first business, John Roberts Spa, that I think is pretty well known in the Cleveland area for great customer service and all those things. Hire from the exact same labor pool, beauty schools that all the other salons in Northeast Ohio hire from. Yet they, these recent cosmetology graduates, I don't know if they're any better, or at their last job they were doing what they're expected to do. It's the culture and training you put them in. I think that the kid parking cars for valet at the Ritz-Carlton or cashier at Chick-fil-A wasn't always world class. It's something about the atmosphere and culture, constant reminder of this is who we are.
How do you constantly remind?
TOMA, top of mind awareness. It's from the branding on the before you even interview them, right? Of narrowing down your talent pool so we're not wasting the time on the interview process, which is another podcast, but making sure that we're selecting people that have the potential for the service aptitude. Then the training that they go through. But the thing with training is you can train a new employee perfectly. But the moment on what you want them to execute, but the moment they go out in their environment, their departments, and the majority of their coworkers aren't doing it, they're not going to do it. So it's not just about what we do with new employees, it's holding the existing employees accountable. So yeah, it's not training once a year, it's not training the only time in new employee orientation, it's constantly training, it's holding them accountable, having KPIs that hold them accountable, and so it's the coaching, but it's also the celebrating and reinforcing the behaviors that we should be hearing about. Customer experience every day. It might be a 30-second, hey, I want to give you an example of what Denise did, how she was the best experience in a customer's day by this. And not something that's finding the baby in the burning building that she rescued, because that's going to be less likely. And I think as an employee, well, I'm not going to get that opportunity ever or rarely. Denise was lucky, she fell into it. It's the simple thing that Denise, remembered the last time the client was in, her daughter was applying for this college, or remembered that the client likes, her coffee this way, or, whatever those little things are. Celebrating those little day-making acts to reinforce the peer pressure of this is who we are. This is
so
what
those are
we do.
easier to do when you're face-to-face. What about all the businesses that may be online?
Yeah, I think it's the same. So I don't know if it's easier, because the way we find out about it, and so we have two businesses. John Roberts, that's B2C, business to consumer, brick and mortar, and then we have the DiJulius Group, which is B2B, business to business. So we have both business models, if you will. And so it's about reinforcing, your nevers and always, your client experience action statement, those things. And then it's about, so this just happened that, recently, I was sharing with our Customer Experience Executive Academy last quarter, I think it was winter quarter. Yeah. That, we were doing the customer experience action statement workshop for our the 2025 attendees. So we're giving examples of all the great brands and their customer experience action statements and what they mean besides just the word. And so I got to the DiJulius groups. And ours is, what is ours, Denise?
Carpe momento.
Yeah. Memento, yes. Seize the moment. And I see what that means is that every opportunity we interact with a potential client, existing client, vendor, team member, in the smallest of ways, might be an email. Hey, is there any chance I can get a call with, one of my consultants? Whatever, can I order books? Whatever the minuscule thing, not just the big the presentation or the workshop that's being conducted. I said, that's, Lindsay, Claudia's, Denise, John, Dave, all of us, opportunity to seize the moment, own that moment. The way we respond to that email, not just by saying, yes, we can do that, but the professionalism, the accuracy, how fast, doing a little bit more than maybe they asked, we think. And so I was explaining that's what Carpe Momento means. One of the attendees said, I want to give you an example of that. I just reached out to Claudia, who is the salesperson for the DiJulius Group, and asked her about something about the project, and realizing she's not the person that I deal with for this part of the project. That should have been either Dave, my consultant, or Lindsay, the consultant's kind of liaison. Claudia was like, absolutely, I can get that. And she did it all for me. And she goes, and then I was like, yes, we made the right decision. And this was like before the work got started. I think she had remembered after she sent the request to Claudia that in the introduction email after she signed, that Claudia kind of said, all right, Lindsay will be taking it from here. But she, out of habit, sent it to Claudia. But so back to that point, when she said that, I said, can you send me an email so I can celebrate that? And, so I shared it in our Slack. And, this is an example of Claudia walking the talk. A couple different reasons. One, I won't do as good of a job, even now, articulating the way she said it. So I wanted to capture it in an email. Then I can celebrate it to everyone and get everyone realizing, that's what we do. And, shame on me if I'm not doing that more often. But also demonstrating people other than the consultants, do this. And it's always the salespeople, the accountants, the hairdressers, the whatever, they get all the praise. But sometimes support people don't get the recognition, so you want to capitalize on that. So that's just another example. And then I had one, I did this again. I was speaking to Joseph Beth's booksellers, GMs. And I was just talking, and so after the person that booked us came up, and it was so funny, this one word just stuck out to me. They go, I just want to tell you, your team walks the talk. Every time I email Lindsay about something, her response is absolutely. And just that one word, right? Absolutely. Not, yes, here it is, attached is what you're asking for. But they're like, she just is on it, and it's always absolutely. And so it's just those little things. So celebrating that, bringing that, recognizing Lindsay, but recognizing everyone that this is Lindsay living the client experience action statement, Carpe Momento.
Lindsay does that even internally with.
Yeah.
She's always, of course, absolutely. Fantastic. And I think you bring up something with the emails, which I have noticed, I'm sure you have, I'm sure our listeners have, that emails now, a lot of responses you get are AI, right? So you read them, and while it may have your name, it may be personalized to your company even, but don't you just know sometimes it's coming from another source? It's not a human being that's actually sending the email out to you. So being able to personalize things.
Well, let me just interject, Denise, I'm sorry. I don't know.
Really?
Which is really scary, right?
I think there are some I don't know, but there are a lot.
But when you don't know, and I'm not saying, the AI is right, but it was like, it's such a generic, yes, no, whatever, one word answer. That's, if you don't know it's AI, that's a pretty poor experience if it is a human being. So it goes back to that. Something that I want to ask you about, and maybe it's just something that's, me, I get like all caught up in something, but when I was working with a client a few weeks ago on their potential customer experience action statement, I said, my new favorite customer experience action statement would be, like I almost wanted to change ours, is to make the person you're dealing with right now in the moment feel like they're your most important person. And the reason why I like that, and argue if I'm incorrect, is I think that's measurable. Right? Like if you came up, let's take it in all facets of businesses. If you came up to a counter with products and the cashier just finished ringing up someone, and it could be a Starbucks, it could be a Hudson's thing at the airport, it could be any place. And she, you put the products in front of her and she just takes her bar scan and just starts scanning it, and she says, is there anything else? Right? I don't feel like the most important person to her in that moment. Versus, if we're watching on video or in person, you come up and you put the stuff in front of her, and before she picks up anything, she just looks at you and says, how's your day? Like she just that. 2 seconds. And then she could ask you, is there anything else you want, or did you know that we have? But just how's your day? I think exciting going on. Any questions about anything? Take it to an email response. Is that more measurable? Was that email response would you argue that email response was you made that person feel like they were the most important person? The phone call and the phone Zoom, did you do the prep work leading up to that phone call of, if it's someone existing client or whatever, you don't remember everything about them, that you did your research, your Ford, family, occupation. Denise, how's Ken? Have you guys been to Florida recently? Is he still working in Pittsburgh during the week? How's his job? Whatever that may be. Or if it's not, if it's obviously being focused, removing any interaction, distractions of like, boom, my text is showing up here from my son Bo, and I'm curious of what his answer was. Why, why did he charge my American Express? All these things that could distract us. And to the other thing is, maybe it's someone we don't have history with, right? It's a potential client. It's whatever the case is, but we have a scheduled call, doing a little recon on them, right? Going to LinkedIn. All right, who is this? Who's our mutual connections? Where did they go to school? And I think it takes, I know it takes less than 5 minutes. Going to their website, and being able to say, Denise, I see that Matt Jensen. How do you know Matt? Isn't he a cool guy, right? I mean, that right there, if I like Matt and you like Matt, and you're going to like me. It just, odds are, maybe I have a story about Matt, and just all the, I don't know. And so tell me, am I crazy? Am I just on to my, new thing of the week? Or is that something that you can train someone to? It could be a hairdresser. And she's cutting your hair. Are you the most important person to her during that 30, 45, 60 minutes? Or is she more worried about all the other activity and conversations next to you? The cashier or receptionist checking you in, technical support. I don't know. Tell me if I'm just being John.
Well, you are being John, but I do like it. The focus of attention. You talked about the person checking you out. Even when they just pick up their head and look at you versus just as everything's coming by and never lifting their head up. But eye contact, I think, is big. But to be able to say,
but I think the pause.
How's your day? And
that's what I mean. I think the pause before we start the transaction, which it should be called the interaction, before we start grabbing products and scanning them, or what's your order? What would you like? Is just to look in their eyes and say, how's it going? And something that made me think about this is it was at Joseph Beth Booksellers. They have gift shops in the hospitals. And so I was trying to think, man, what do you do if you work in a hospital? Because you probably don't want to ask how you doing, because you're visiting, right? You're one of two people their customers are. Staff, nurses, doctors, all that, or you're visiting a patient. So you want to avoid that. So their question is, who are you here to visit? And then they go a little, deeper without maybe, going down, thing, but, which is cool. But just like you said, taking a pause, stopping your hands, and just looking at someone and say, hey, how's it going? Or who are you visiting today? Or whatever that is, can make me feel like, I am the most important person in this moment to you.
And even a compliment. When it's someone you don't know, you have a quick interaction.
Love your scarf.
Laughing. Yeah, just
right.
a simple.
Yeah, I love the compliment thing, because I don't know what percentage of the world, and I know it's changed since the work from home, but maybe I'm more vain than most people. But night before I'm going somewhere, work, wherever, I pick out my outfit, right? Shoes, socks, shirt, if there's a sport jacket or a vest or whatever. And then I kind of, and then I'll, if Claudia's around, ask her if this works, and, she'll maybe give me the
what do you do when she's not around?
I'm in trouble, right? So I don't know if this is different for you, but then I wake up and go to put on that outfit and I'll start second guessing. Do you do that ever?
After you've laid it out the night before?
Yeah. I'll question my judgment. Probably 20% of the time I change my mind. Whatever. So, but we...
Actually about, does it fit?
Yeah. But my point is, I think a lot more people do that than not. So how cool is it to get rewarded for the decisions you stressed over? Like, I love that scarf with that top you have on, right? You took time, maybe stressed over that combination and how that would show up on a podcast, a Zoom, or whatever meetings you might have today. So just taking a second and authentically saying, I love your glasses. I love that outfit, right? Whatever it may be. It doesn't make you unauthentic or not genuine. It forces you to pause and see things that you should be seeing.
Was it Neen James who told...
Listen with your eyes.
Yes.
Yeah, she wrote the book Attention, and I love that. Listen with your eyes. Like, be so focusing on the person. The way I take it is that someone should be able to blow a firecracker off, and you don't realize it, because you are the most important person to me right now. Doesn't mean you're more important than my family. It doesn't mean you're more important than my employee. But right now in this moment, you're the most important person to me. That's hard. It's a lot harder. But if you train to it, if you show examples that when it's not, I think that's the type of training we need to be focused on. And I believe it's measurable.
This was soup to nuts, this week's episode. Thank you, John. Let's call that a wrap.
Thanks, Denise. See you next time.
See you next time.